there is no question there's a need. I think this is the best, the way it's being done. The developers on each side gave 10 feet of land. It's going to be landscaped like Wrestler. There are going to be hike and bike trails from I-10 to the mountain park, which there aren't now. And I think it will be an asset to the whole city of El Paso and not just District 1.
This question is specifically for Lyda Ness Garcia, but I was told that they'd like all the candidates to answer. FEMA flood maps are a major concern. What will you do to help us with the maps? What is the current status of the maps? And it was specifically formulated for Ms. Ness Garcia, so we'll start with you and then go to Dr. Ware Asbury and then Becker.
Okay, can you repeat the question?
Sure. What will you do to help us with the FEMA flood maps?
Okay, well, my understanding is, and I'm only getting this information from the current representative, is that they are doing some form of study that apparently is going to cost all you residents in the Upper Valley approximately $50 added onto your tab in order to do this independent study. I lived in the Upper Valley during the flood, so when they say the Upper Valley didn't flood, my property flooded, so I'm not sure what Ms. Lilly was referring to in regards to the floods, the Great Flood, as we like to call it up there. In terms of what I would do, I mean, I do absolutely support FEMA needs to come in and provide the insurance that we need to. I didn't have flood insurance because I didn't know I needed it in 2006. So I absolutely support FEMA coming in and providing that type of insurance to the residents, if that's the question. I don't know how much more I could personally do about it. I don't have that much control over the federal government, even if I was on city council.
Dr. Ware Asbury?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Would you repeat it?
Sure. What will you do to help us with the FEMA flood maps? Currently, FEMA, in its current map, basically the entire Upper Valley requires that you purchase flood insurance, and it's included in the new map. FEMA, though, now is revisiting the process that it took to come to that conclusion, but depending on what they decide in the next year or so, Upper Valley residents may or may not be required to purchase very expensive flood insurance, and to appeal that would take thousands of dollars and opinions from experts like engineers. So what would you do to help Upper Valley residents who may or may not be required to purchase this very expensive flood insurance in the next years?
Well, I'm still not sure if I understand the question. First, I would find out what the status of the map and do what I could to help FEMA come to a conclusion quicker to determine whether we do or don't need the flood insurance. To just sit here and say exactly what I'm going to do when there are so many unanswered questions would be dishonest to the constituents. That is an issue that is convoluted at this point, and it will take some time to clear up, and it's going to take a number of resources to get involved to clear it up.
Representative Lilly?
Well, first of all, the FEMA maps just put the properties in the floodplain. It's simple. And that's what increases your insurance. FEMA's not selling insurance. They're going to put your property in the floodplain, and that's what's going to increase the insurance. Now, there was, and there still is to some extent, a large group of people who think there is a need for an extra study, which would be $220,000. And the city doesn't have that kind of money. The city manager can only approve $50,000 or less. So all the rest of the representatives would have to approve it. And they said, no, we're not doing that. So some people in the Upper Valley thought that if each house paid $50, and it would have to, you know, that maybe we could get that $220,000 study done, and it would help prove to FEMA that the Upper Valley shouldn't be in the floodplain. So that's what, it wasn't any kind of tax, it would be completely voluntary. It was just a thought. Now it looks like FEMA is not going to put the Upper Valley in, and this is what we're we're praying for and pushing, well, Corning is the one that needs to help us with this, to keep the maps so that they don't show the upper valley in the floodplain until after, well, never, but at least hold back until the levees are certified.
Mr. Schechter?
Sometimes it's important to solve a problem on who you know. And some people in here might remember that several years ago I used to host a forum every week on various issues, and several times I had Congressman Reyes come and enlighten us about what's happening in Washington. The most political pressure we can put on Washington, and FEMA comes out of Washington, is to work with Congressman Reyes to convince the FEMA people that the current situation in the Upper Valley is transitory and that they're in their best interest to redo the maps and keep the Upper Valley out of there. I think most people will realize that Congressman Reyes also has a vested interest because his property might be in the flood zone as well. So sometimes it's working with other people rather than coming up with the solution yourself.
This next question is for Dr. Ware Asbury. I'm sorry, Mr. Hinojosa with the FEMA flood map. Sorry about that.
That's right. Well, the same question. Okay. Well, FEMA. Now, the federal government, when they want to come and help, that's one thing. When they come and impose something that's going to cost us money and the citizens don't want it, I wish I had the power to take back that other thing they sent us. Do you know they ordered, to my knowledge, to change all our street signs because the letters are too big. So if we could take that money instead and use it for this other thing, wouldn't that be an ideal world? But again, we're dealing with
open spaces, and we don't pollute the environment. We produce, I guess, jobs that are green, things that are going to make us environmentally friendly.
I guess the question is more in the spirit of what specific policies would you push for to make El Paso green? What did you mean by that?
When I think about making policy, that is not something you do in privacy. You go out and solicit input from the people who are going to be impacted. That is something that is going to affect not only me individually, but the city collectively. So what I would do is involve those people and those resources that are more knowledgeable about green spaces, green jobs, and making El Paso green, and come up with a plan that is productive and useful to all the people that are going to be involved as well as affected.
Okay. This next question is for all the candidates. The city endorses no bid contracts on sole source contracts, which makes it difficult or impossible for small businesses to compete with large contracted businesses outside of El Paso. Do you support this process and no bid contracts? Representative Lilly.
I don't really understand the question that well.
Okay, let me read it again. The city endorses no bid contracts or sole source contracts, which makes it difficult or impossible for small businesses to compete with large contracted businesses outside of El Paso. Do you support this process and no bid contracts?
No, and I don't know about no bid contracts. See, they have to put out RFPs to companies, and since I've been in city council, I would say the majority of businesses that get the contracts are locally owned. I have not seen, and I used to know the numbers, and I'm sorry I don't anymore. But most of the businesses done by companies in town.
Mr. Schechter?
I'm not, it sounds like there's a little confusion part of whoever wrote that. So I'm gonna guess at what they were probably talking about. The city has a number of agreements with other cities and entities to use their qualifications